Morning, everyone. Really excited to moderate this session. In fact, when I was reached out to sort of talk about the different sessions which were opportunity for moderating, I thought this was one of the sessions which I was really interested in fact, learning about it. So I thought this is the session I wanted to go about. So maybe instead of spending more time, we can just directly jump onto the session. Maybe Divij, we'd like to start with you. I think I know Power Gummies, we have been tracking the company quite well. You guys have been doing well. Why don't you start about your learnings or what are the things you think from your style that needs to be done differently for a brand in today from a D2C perspective?
So I think in my journey what I've learned is that principally everything is same. Everybody you go to will say that you got to do influencer marketing, you got to do digital marketing, you got to have a different brand positioning. But how do we actually do that is the actual learning. Like with influencer marketing now you have...
You have to be closer.
Okay, can you hear me now? Yeah. So it's nearly the same things that everybody will tell you, but then eventually what you do differently is the real crack of it. Now, for example, for influencer marketing, you will have now with big bang, one impression and everybody doing it very quarterly, you have ample opportunities of things to be done. But then what is exactly that the audience wants is something that you only have to figure out. Like for us, influencer marketing is something that we have an in-house division. We've been doing it ourselves because what we do is we understand that what my brand positioning has to be something that I communicate. We give them a creative freedom, but along with that creative freedom, it is very important to set boundaries. Because if you don't set boundaries and give a creative person the n number of opportunities, then you'll go haywire in your brand positioning and brand messaging. So you have to be very particular as to what I have to give up. And I think that creative narrative is something that has to be designed by the company itself. So one thing that you want to do with influencer marketing when you hear about it is please keep the creative narrative to yourself. That is something that should flow from the company side. What has to be done in the guidelines, in a strict passage format has to go from the company, and then you can give a creative leverage as to you want to do it your style is something that's completely okay. And if you are thinking that conversions will happen through influencer marketing, that's not the gameplay. You get conversions from remarketing that influencer marketing activities that you have done. So I'm starting with this topic because I know this was something that was being discussed at the breakfast today. So everybody had this as the hot topic as to what should we do in influencer marketing? How is it going for you? What is you doing? What is that you are doing differently? So I thought I'll take up this as my first, and then probably we'll jump on and I'll come back with another points.
Very good. No, I think very good. I think that's a very good point, and I think this is in fact we were talking to one of the global brands who were trying to get into India. They said that we do all in-house. They have in fact created a studio in-house doing exactly the same thing. But obviously for some of the brands, I know till the time you reach a certain scale, you cannot invest that money. And that's the content which you're creating is very, very important. I think I was hearing the same thing from one of the other brands which we were talking some time back.
And you have to learn this, then I think the best people to learn this from is Nykaa.
Very interesting, very interesting. Yeah, so Disha.
So I think totally agree with what Divij has said, right? Like,
Shai,
can you hear me properly now? Ha. So I totally agree what Divij has said, right? To build a business today and yesterday, nothing has changed in terms of the basics, right? आपको basics तो सही करने ही हैं, right? Which is building the correct product, right? And a kick-ass product, right? Like that cannot be compromised in any sense, right? Be it growth or what your competitor is doing or anything for that matter, right? Building a kick-ass product, making sure that your company is built around your customers and not around your competitors or growth or the story which is there on the market, right, is extremely important, and it was important before as well, right? But how do you build it right now, given that you have so much information and there are so many things around, right, which also makes you lose focus, is extremely important, is what I feel, right? Like at Zouk, for us, I always tell my product design team कि यार product ऐसा बनाना है that your customer should feel happy about it, right? And that is what you should focus, right? You should not see what the competitors are doing, right? And then try to make something out of it, right? So for me, keeping customer as the center of everything a company does, right? Making a kick-ass product, which was, of course, true in the past as well, is extremely important right now, right? But if you ask me what more you can do differently in the current scenario, I would say there are two things that you can do more to build your D2C brand. That will be A, messaging, one which is via the influencers, right? Given now we have so many platforms where your messaging or communication goes out, right? And your customer is bombarded with so much information all the time, right? You have to be very, very clear what do you stand for, right? Like for us, we take pride in building stylish and functional products with an essence of India, and we have always been saying that. And you know, in our communication, be it online, be on emails or anything for that matter, right? We have made sure that, you know, we say this very clearly. So we have always been saying that we are a proudly Indian brand, right? And like it is much before that vocal for local became vogue in India, right? So it's very important that your message is very clear and simple, and that will break the clutter for your brand, right? And second thing is, it has become much easier to experiment nowadays, right? Because what has happened is now you have more access to your customer. You can reach farther geographies very quickly. So you can collect a lot of data, run a lot of experiment, and actually get a feedback much faster, right? Now it's not like यार मैं एक store में डालूंगा, फिर मैं 10 store में डालूंगा, फिर it will go to, you know, other cities and so on and so forth, and it will take a lot of time for me to get whether my product is working or not, right? Now there are, you know, that turnaround time has reduced drastically, right? So you can run a lot of experiment, learn from it, right? And iterate, right? So these are the two things that I actually, like, you know, any D2C brand can do currently. But at the end of the day, I'll always tell everybody who asks for advice from me is like, your product has to be kick-ass and your customer has to be the focus. Rest all will fall in place.
No, very good point, Disha. I think, I think if I just understand influencer marketing or the way you communicate, that's important. Then core comes, the center comes, the product, right? Because that's the most important thing about your thing. And another point which I picked up during your point is the data and how you act and the speed at which you act probably.
Exactly.
Because that's very important, because given a digital brand, you are communicating to the consumer every day. You get sort of so lot of data, you have to analyze it, take a corrective action, go back and do it. And very good points. I think those are very good points. Chirag, I think yours is a very interesting journey and we sort of know each other quite well. Being an omni-channel brand, started with an offline, trying to being digital and in a category which is very different there, and now going into a larger food product. So I think it will be very interesting to hear about your sort of thoughts about it.
So I look at things, our D2C in a very different way, right? Because why should a consumer come to my website and buy popcorns, right? That's where we started from, right? So there has to be a value add which I'm giving for a customer to come to my website. And why do I need a website if I have an offline presence, right? So if you look at, so let's take an example like Cadbury, right? They've been in the country for ages, right? If they open a website today, what do they have offered to a consumer, which they don't do it in offline, right? They have all the chocolates available everywhere, right? But if you go to their website, they build it around gifting, right? It's a value add for a consumer to say, you know, hey, I want to put my picture on my box, right? And then give it to somebody, right? So that's a value add which a Cadbury is giving to somebody, right? And it's still a very massy product for somebody to buy online, right? So there has to be a real value add in a long run, which a website is solving, because I believe ultimately everyone in India has to come offline, right? If a consumer brand, right? They need to have local presence. For us, what it works is two things, right? The way we look at website is, one is reachability, right? Still as a startup, as a young, relatively younger company, right? We don't have presence everywhere, right? So we still have consumers who have seen our product somewhere. Somebody would have flown in an airlines, eaten our product, but don't know how to buy it in their local city. So for them, a website is an easy solution to come to our website and see what all do we offer, right? It's a showcasing for us also, and for them to pick and choose what we offer, right? The other thing is really, why would somebody buy a microwave popcorn online? I think it's one is assortment, right? You get everything in one place, which we have to offer. And I think, again, the value add. So how we are building our website is, so you come into our website and say, Chirag, I love your cheese popcorn, but I love it with cat chocolate popcorn. Can you do it for me? Right? That's something we can do it on our website, right? So really, I believe in long run, I think we need to offer something which sustains in a consumer mind, right? This is the reason I need to go to 4700 BC website and stick to it, right? So that's how we are looking at this at a long-term solution for us. I personally think we cannot never compete with a delivery model of like a Swiggy Instamart in these days, or like even Amazon, right? The amount of warehousing they are opening, I think it's not very cost effective for a brand to, in a longer run, to do all that what an Amazon can do or Swiggy Instamart can do. So there has to be something for which a consumer is ready to wait maybe half a day extra or a day extra coming from a brand. I think that's where we need to find the right value add, right? And I think every brand is very different in this aspect, right? So, for example, we are relatively a mass consumer brand when it comes to product, right? They could be a very niche product which is not available everywhere. For them, website makes more sense, right? Because they can offer, that's the only showcasing portal they have, right? In that sense. So I think it really depends where you are in your journey. I think what kind of product you have. But I think one thing which everybody should look at the things is what they have to offer which they cannot offer anywhere else, right, through their website. That's how we look at things at this stage.
Interesting, Chirag, interesting. In fact, one of the things which I picked up during your thought was sort of customization, what you were trying to come back and saying, because if a customer wants a cheese popcorn with a chocolate, I'm happy to sort of customize and send it to you, because that's what you can, and that's why you are able to use that platform to communicate to the consumer. Very interesting. Param, you have been in the spotlight for last few months. Maybe why don't you sort of come in here?
So, Vineet, very, very interesting topic, and founder folks have covered quite a few things. So, the core to us and our success also of late has been, core focus on at least 5 to 7 things. What Disha started with, product is the center of anything, right? So, product plus consumer centricity is something which actually is the long-term game. Nothing can beat that. Now, along with that, if any new age founders or even any of us have to really scale, we need to have focus on the competition which is around us, right? The competition specifically, there are 2 very, very large strategies which we need to work on. One is the optimized marketing strategies, that how do you really use your budget in the right way by, say, onboarding the right influencers or spending on the right ecosystem of marketing. Second, now, be it D2C, be it the omni-channel D2C, or be it the entire omni-channel approach of a retail plus online, right? So what does this come to? This comes to the strength of distribution. When, as a D2C brand, if the world has come to a 10-minute delivery, right? So one has to look at the fact of how fast, how strengthened your distribution is, because consumer is not willing to wait. Even if they are very attached to you, there is a strict timeline that you need to follow. You need to build around your brand that your distribution is really sorted. How do you ensure pan-India your 48 hours delivery? From 48 hours to 20,000 pin codes in India are 24 hours, or 10 hours within at least 10,000 pin codes of India. So distribution is key to success. Then the world is very competitive. You need to load more capital. You need to load more resources. The focus on building team from any stage of business. One should not look at that as a cost. It should be looked at as an investment, where you really need to bring in the right folks who can stand with you and deliver. Because the speed of execution, that's the key. That's the differentiating factor. If you really need to succeed, you need to build million-dollar brands, a unicorn. 3 years, 2 years, people are building unicorn brands. So execution is the key. So anything you put out brings into the speed of execution. And what Chirag, really captured in the last point. So being D2C, what differentiating experience you give with everything in around the ecosystem of delivery, marketing, how you really bring them to the hook of personalization or customization. Because that is your differentiating factor on your app or your website, right? Because that Amazon or Nykaa or anyone else will not be able to offer. So that is the hook which you can create for your consumers for a long time and ensure that even if your cost of acquisition for the first purchase is high, your repeat is low. Your repeat rate is high, but your repeat acquisition cost is low. So that is how we look at the things on an overall level, that how you really remain ahead of the curve, because it's not only competing within the D2C ecosystem, the entire old legacy brands have come to the party of D2C. They have realized the benefit of reaching out to the consumers directly, and they are trying to pivot to our D2C strategies, right?
No, interesting, Param, very interesting. I think the three words which I picked up was definitely the first was distribution. I think that's, and I want to spend more time when we go to Punit because it is his topic too. The second I obviously realized was team and execution. I think that, in fact, there's an article in a report I was reading a few years back. 8 out of 10 startups, or which does well, does basically purely do well because of execution, right? It's not about the different idea. It's only about execution. Only 1 or 2 is the one because of different idea or some creativity or innovation was ahead. 8 out of 10 which succeeds is purely because of execution. That's a survey which was done.
Constant execution. Constant.
Yeah, constant execution. Absolutely, constant execution, right. Puneet, going to you, I think given you work with most of the upcoming D2C brands, I'm sure you are doing it. What is your thoughts about this, or what have you been seeing differently between the different D2C brands? I know you work with the larger ones to the smaller ones. What have you been noticing, and what are your thoughts about this? That what do you think are the things which needs to be done differently by a D2C brand?
Sure. So the way I like to see this entire D2C ecosystem is basically it has 2 parts. As Disha mentioned, you have to have a kick-ass product, which all of us assume that you will do that, right? What happens next is, I think, very interesting. What Param also, I think, pointed out. What kind of experience are you creating for your consumers, all the way from when they first interact with the brand, and then all the way to delivery, re-engagement, and basically all of that, right? And that's a very unique opportunity that the D2C brands have, which legacy brand didn't have. Because you put your product in a large store, there's no way for you to interact with your customers directly, right? And that's a very unique opportunity, but how do you leverage that, right? How do you leverage that? And given, all of us keep talking about how hiring in India is becoming so difficult and all of that, and that is where I think a lot of automation, innovative use of technology can actually create a very differentiating factor, right? In fact, we were talking about how Cadbury is doing customization on each and every order level, right? And until now it was not possible. Only D2C can actually execute that too economically, right? And that is where I think the deployment of technology becomes very, very powerful, right? And you have to, using the technology, how do you essentially control, the entire journey? When you get an order, like Param was mentioning, you should be able to deliver that within 48 hours, right? And now the new norm is, we are talking about delivering within few hours, right? And that's where I think, a lot of the challenges are coming in, but along with that, the opportunity is opening up. And I truly think that, what we are seeing right now in the D2C ecosystem is just the beginning. The next set of success will probably come from creating the experiences around the interaction with the brand rather than the product itself.
Very interesting, Puneet. And I think I totally agree on the technology part. I think one other part which you were sort of mentioning is about the data, about how you sort of use that and data part. I think very interesting. Pawan, I know you joined us late, but...
Sorry guys.
Yeah. So Pawan, I think we have been having this discussion on the topic on understanding from different brand owners or sort of what they have been think from things needs to be done differently. you as a part of the large organization who has created multiple brands, then taken some of them to online, I'm sure you're working with some of the younger D2C brands. What are your thoughts about this? What are the you think a D2C brand today needs to do differently compared to what it used to do 2 years back? And what are your thoughts you have been seeing on this part?
Great. I think it's a very interesting topic. Once again, apologies for the delay, guys. I think a lot of points have already been covered. I think product is the key, differentiation is the key. I think a lot of my colleagues spoke here. What are we delivering to the customer? Like, how are you different? What is the value you're adding to the customer? I think, you spoke of speed, obviously execution is extremely important, because these customers don't have patience. And I think lastly, experience, right? What kind of experience are you bringing to the table for your customer? I think these are all very, very valid point, guys, and extremely, it needs to be kept in mind when you create a T2C brand. But I'm going to add one thing, acquiring customer for a D2C business is not easy. It's very expensive. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So my advice to everybody is collect data as much as possible, right? The more collection of data you do at your platform level or any point, right? Because just about burning money, with Google and Facebook is not going to take you anywhere. I'm sorry, I'm not mixing words here at all, right? So therefore, collection of data, ensuring repeat is extremely important. That is where you will see that your unit economics is making sense. So that's one big advice from my side. Collect as much. There are traditional marketing like email marketing and a lot of these SMS marketing, people kind of don't believe in it, but go for it. Believe me, this is where you will see a ROI over a period of time. Ensure you engage with your customers, right? It's not about just creating a transaction and then, keep pushing them with promotion. It's not going to help, right? Create some value add. If you are in the business of fashion, see what you can do with the customer, how you can give tips and so on and so forth, right? Extremely important. So from my side, I think collection of data is extremely important. And lastly, create communities, right? Like-minded people coming in together who appreciate your value, who can create word of mouth for you, right? I think these are the only ways where I think a D2C business can be win, unless you have a lot of funding and you have other objectives. That's a separate thing. Otherwise, this is how my experience has been.
No, Pawan, very, very interesting point. In fact, sorry, Pawan, me and Param were having a chat this morning on the similar sort of a line. In fact, and because we do a lot of this investment part of the work with the D2C brands, unit economics is the key, right? I can tell you every investor we talk, right? And unit economics has changed over the last 5 years because in 2016-17, the cost of acquisition was way lower, right? In the last, I would say 12 months or so, because of the amount of capital has gone into certain categories, the cost of acquisition has gone up, right? And now, how do you sort of ensure you still have a profitable, how are your ROAS talking about it? I think those are the things, at least from an investor side, I can tell you, are the questions being asked daily, every time we meet a D2C founder or an investor meets a dealer. That's very, very common and a very, very good point. I think unit economics is very, very important. I think it's I remember 2010, I was here in the Images Forum and we were talking about store economics, right? Retail, right? We used to talk about store economics, get your store economics right. Store economics right. People used to say, now people talk on D2C, focus on your unit economics. Make sure your CM1 is right. Make sure your CM2 is right. That's exactly the same 10 years back. From brick and mortar, we have moved to digital, but we talk about the same stuff. I think that's very interesting there. Another part, I think, Pawan, which I wanted to, given sort of you touched about from a acquisition perspective, I think, which I've been hearing a lot, and I think, I'm sure you guys have been asked about this. Acquisition cost as has gone up, right? To somewhere, you are a brand. You need to be present across channels. You can't be only purely on your own website. Second, as the cost of acquisition goes up and trying to drive traffic back to your own website continues to be expensive, right? But when you are saying you are a D2C brand and trying to talk to a consumer directly and trying to collect that data, right? If you go to a marketplace, you lose some part of the data, right? Now that's a big debate. And obviously from a cost perspective, it is better to be a blended, or I would say a hybrid D2C brand, as we say in today's world. And so where do you guys think that should, because own website versus a marketplace model is a big debate I hear every day, right? Ideal situation, own website 100%, that's the best situation. Most expensive, never will make money. And delivery distribution will continue to be a challenge, right? Because an Amazon logistics or a Nika logistics is far better than a logistics which we sort of try to do. So that's every day. And then again goes back to the consumer experience point, right? How do you give a consumer? So where is the balance, or where do you think one sort of should look at it? Maybe Divij, we'd like to start with you first to do that part.
And I think now I'll help you promote your sponsors. ShipRocket is, I think, best to manage all your logistics needs.
No. Absolutely. No. They have done a very good job.
They've done a very good job. I mean, I really appreciate the team and everybody, and I think they're always 10 steps ahead. That's what my experience has been working with them. So, yeah, of course, I mean, they have solved a lot of the logistics problems that we would have, and why people were, why people were more appreciative about Amazon logistics. I think now D2C has managed to crack that at least.
Absolutely.
Thanks to people like ShipRocket who are doing this for the whole D2C community, I would say. The other thing that I would say is for us. See, e-com is one essential element that you can't leave out of. You can't leave these marketplaces out, because this is where people are, shopping 10 other things. They can never go out. But for us as a brand, if you want to build a website, what we do as a mix is that we want to go to these marketplaces to increase our target market, to acquire new customers. But then we make sure that we are having so many delight factors that you only get on our own website, so that at least the repeat buy or the next buy, when we have touch-based with the audience, happens on our own website. Now, for example, could be the smallest and the shortest things that, give your clients happiness. One thing that, Sugar is doing very nicely. So we recently launched a sling bag. Now that sling bag was a cute sling bag that you only get on our own website. So you buy a Power Gummies bottle and you get a very nice sling bag that you can use. Now we keep doing such initiatives so that the new customers that we are touch basing on these marketplaces, where, eventually we just get to the new consumers who are comfortable buying on these platforms. They buy the product, the next buy has to happen on your website. Other thing that I would like to add is that, since D2C is growing and customer acquisition is becoming more and more expensive, it is very important with the growth that, you create niche. Because in D2C, one thing that is, very easy is that you get tempted to, get into different categories, quickly launch new variants, and get to, a big product line, thinking that, if I have too many products, my average order value will increase. But so it's a different approach. I come from a school of approach where I feel that, in the longer run, it's all about the niche that you create. So even if you have picked one category, I think you should become a winner in that category before you pivot to other things. Because ultimately, you have that limited budget that you're throwing in the market. And if you have 15, 20, 25 things in your portfolio which are totally different, then you're just losing out on your focus. I think for a right spirit in the D2C, you should have that one thing that, resonates with the brand, that creates the brand, and till the time you have hammered it, you should not pivot to, having multiple things in the range. Other thing is that, you from day one, you should be clear that what is your longer vision. Is it brand house or is it house of brands? So the whole game plan changes if you, know the answer to it.
Very interesting. In fact, house of brands is become today a necessity, right? And whenever I speak to a D2C founder, they said, we have the infrastructure, we have the team, how do we use synergy? But I don't know, I'm not a brand owner, I've never created a brand, I've worked with brand owners, but creating different brands, it is a task, right? And that's what sort of is a very important, and I've seen, and people who have done very well in the last 12 months, I've seen people have created house of brands. I know Mama Earth now has 3 or 4 brands sort of there, and there are other brands which have created. So we did fantastically some of the job which they have done. But what is your thought about, Disha, if we have to sort of look at from a house of brands thing, do you think, and when is the right time for a D2C founder to start thinking about a house of brand, right? in what part of their journey? And is house of brands the only way to go, or is it we should only talk about saying, let's focus one brand, take it big, no need to go into house of brands?
So Vineet, when anybody asks me, ki, yaar, what are your thoughts about house of brand? The first thing that I ask them is, ki, yaar, why do you want to build a house of brand? The extremely important question, right? The three major things that I feel कि आप house of brands बनाएंगे would be A, that you are playing in a certain price range and you want to move drastically away from that price point. So in that case, you might want to build a different brand altogether, right? Second is that you had a XTG, right? And now you want to go towards a very different TG, then you can think of making a different brand, right? And third is that, you are in certain category and, now you want to build a category which has almost no association what you currently make, right? So if you, under the same brand, make that different category, your consumer will get confused here why this brand is doing so and so forth, right? So if, if your answers to these questions are like, I'm playing on a different price point, I have a different TG, or the category is altogether different, then it makes sense for you to, build a different brand, right? As you correctly said, building a brand is not at all easy, right? And it, in this world, it's extremely difficult, not only in terms of the marketing budgets that we spend, right? But also the way you communicate and in the way that how many other brands are already there in that market, right? So how will you differentiate yourself, right? So there's a lot of effort that goes into building brand, right? So for me, what I would personally, suggest somebody is like, you should build your brand on such values that, if tomorrow you launch a different category or you get into a different mind space, or not mind space, sorry, if you get into a different TG altogether, your consumer relates you with the value that you have created and not only the product that you have created, right? And that will make it very easier for you to, sell multi-category in the same brand itself, right? So as I was at Zouk, we say that, we make this unapologetically Indian products, right? Which are not only made in India, but are also in look and feel very Indian, right? So if tomorrow we get into different categories, right, which follows the same ethos, right, it will be very natural for a consumer to think, yaar, Zouk ye karta hai, acha, haan, makes sense for them to do this as well, right? And that time you don't have to make a house of brands, right? So that are my 2 cents on it.
Very, very good. Very, very good point. Yeah. Chirag, I think the other point which I thought we should sort of debate some time was this whole omni-channel, right? I think the offline to online and online brands going to offline, I think, and you guys are the pioneer in this, sort of doing well, being a strong offline guy, being online now. Where do you think this offline-online mix is going to, because see, today consumers, still 90% of the consumers buy offline, and that's where the large market is. The point which Param said, you should be available now, rather than saying, I will order and wait for 2 days to get my delivery, right? And when you say offline, then offline also helps that problem, because if I want to buy a gummy and it's available next to my medical store, I can just pick it up rather than ordering and waiting from Amazon or doing that part. So, and from your brand, right, especially the popcorn brand which you have created, has a very strong offline presence. It can be available on a neighborhood store. Where do you think that mix is? And when do you think a D2C brand which started purely online needs to go offline? Because there is offline is a different world altogether, right? And this is some of the larger FMCGs have cracked the distribution channels which they have built it up. Where do you think that sort of, that should be a thought, like if tomorrow Divij comes to us and say, okay, let's be present in 80,000 stores across India, right? Or 80,000 chemist stores, I'm assuming there. What is the right time? When we should start? Because there's an amount of capital goes, amount of team execution goes. When is the right time that start thinking about it?
So you answered it yourself, right? Whenever you have money, right? As simple as that. You need a lot of money to go offline, right? If we think D2C expensive, right? Offline is super expensive, right? Just pure the distribution, building the team, right? Have the strength of, have so much inventory, team across the country, have people managing those teams. I think offline is a different element altogether, right? I mean, if you see, I would trade D2Cs on the bottom, right? Modern trade is a little up, and GT is the toughest, right? Because, for us to even try doing GT in Delhi is killing, right? I mean, having 50 people on the ground, managing them, giving them so many SKUs, because you can't go to a GT market with 3 SKUs, 4 SKUs, right? Your economics will never work, right? Until you're probably selling a bhujia, right? Which is as commodity as possible, right, in India. But still, they also need so many SKUs to give to those people, right? So I think the right time, I think the ideal journey, if somebody has to start today, would be, do your test case online, build it up, right? Have a decent set of SKUs, right? When you build normally a D2C website, your AOV is very high. That's how you target, right? Your ticket size is high, your MRPs are normally in a higher range, right? But when you come in retail, that doesn't work, right? You need products which are more massy, can be available in more stores, right? So you need to be ready for all that, right? And you only grow over a period of time. I don't think, if somebody have told me 5 years back, you have to start GT, I would not have understood anything how to do GT, right? But over a period of time, being in the industry, being understanding consumer how it works, now I'm little better than over the period of time. So I think there's a right time from an experience perspective. I think you need a product, right, to be in retail, I think offline. And somebody needs to understand what works in retail, what would work for you as a brand, with the current SKUs, how many stores you can actually do, right? Let's take a simple unit economics, right? Delhi GT, right? We started with say 2 SKUs, right? 10 rupees, 20 rupees, and we were just doing an experiment, right? I think after 3 months I realized I can't do GT with 2 SKUs, right? Again, right? 50 people selling 2 SKUs, whatever we are able to do, right? Whatever numbers we are doing, still good, but still doesn't make sense, right? So we need to have a lot of SKUs for them also at that level, right? So you need to be ready from that perspective, right? So that's how I look at things, right? I think understand that market well before you actually enter into it. I think a lot of people are talking about D2C right now, so it's easier for people to probably understand how D2C work these days. And everybody knows Facebook and Google doesn't work, right? So a lot of what works and what doesn't work. I think similarly, somebody needs to understand the offline market before entering into that. And you need to get your product right, pricing right. For example, right? I mean, you have to get 10, 20 rupees price point, right? You can't do a 12 rupees point, 13 rupees point, bean. And there's a different game altogether. Your packaging has to be, for example, we thought a popcorn is expensive, right? But if I make a smaller packet of popcorn selling at 10 rupees compared to a chips, it doesn't work, right? Because the consumer who is buying a 10 rupees product wants to have the maximum they can get in 10 rupees, right? So it's a very different ball game altogether. So you learn over a period of time, right? We made a 10 rupees packet similar to Act 2. Act 2 used to give 40 grams, and we said we can be a better quality brand and we can survive in 30 grams product, right? But no, we get a feedback, yaar, aapka popcorn kam banta hai, unka zyada banta hai, right? That's all they care, right? And then the maximum feedback we got, right? So it's a very different market, I think, very different consumer set. When you're talking about an AOV of 500, 600 rupees, your customers is very different. When you're talking about an AOV of 20 rupees, 30 rupees, 50 rupees, your customer is very different, right? So you have to be really there to understand that market. Sometimes we make mistakes and learn, and that's how most of us learned a lot of things. But I think you have to get the product right, have to understand the consumer right, and have to have the right product mix before you even think of getting offline.
Very interesting, very interesting. Param, I would like you to take the same question, because now what I've been hearing about your brand, now you're opening multiple kiosks, going offline, and largely in D2C brand now trying to go offline, right? And that's I want to understand, how are you thinking in this I clearly like, I think, Chirag point on the product, because the consumer on both sides are different. Somebody who's paying a $500 to paying a $20 is different. I'm sure, how are you thinking about when you are thinking about opening kiosk or planning to go offline in the thing?
So Vineet, I can only comment on right now on this, typically to our strategy first. So as Chirag very well captured, so it has to be a very right pricing strategy for offline. Very, very right. It cannot be too low, because your operational cost will then become too high. And it cannot be too high, then your acquisition cost, it will be only shelf and rentals that will happen, and nothing else will come out to you, because for a new brand, a credit cycle will always remain 60 to 90 days or even to 120 days in the offline market. And if it is not moving from the shelf, you keep on paying monthly rentals, right? So that's going to hurt. Now, typically, it's important to have money in the bank whenever you wish to launch the offline play. But, as smart entrepreneurs, we also need to look at that traditionally business has been done offline. Even very, very small people who have been operating in their markets, they've been able to capture very, very smart categories, even at the right pricing, and they have entered retail only. Because largely 93% till now is offline. 7% business is only shifted online, right? So if all the people who have been running India have been bringing products, so आज क्या हो गया है कि बड़ा स्मार्ट ये टर्म कॉइन कर दिया है कि D2C, राइट? सो एंड ऑफ द डे डायरेक्ट टू कंज्यूमर सारे ही हैं, वो भी कंज्यूमर के पास ही जा रहे हैं, चाहे एक चैनल के वाया जा रहे हैं, राइट? नाउ यू आर रीचिंग टू द कंज्यूमर डायरेक्टली. If you have built a product, then it's easier for you to enter. Very clear examples like Boat and Mamaearth, 3 years, great scale up on the online channels, created a demand, created a niche, created hero SKUs, and they have an online pull coming in for their hero SKUs, right? Now, if you want to enter offline, if you have, say, 7 products which are in the right pricing strategy, which have a market already, and which can be lifted, you should target it from your data-centric approach, looking at your cohorts of your online performance, that which locations, which cities, which territories have performed for you, and test it out in that particular territory only. Don't go, India is too large. If we are targeting, say, 100 crore revenue in a year, so how many consumers you want to touch base? India is 140 crore people. You don't have to go behind 140 crore people, right? You can very well establish, say, a business only in Kerala. I want to set up my market in Kerala, my Ayurveda product. So we are a Ayurvedic brand, right? So I know if I test it out in Kerala, I will get better results. I have better ROI on my investment. So even if I want to deploy only 1 CR of my entire capital into testing, I will look at my data of my website or my e-commerce performance, that where my consumers are the maximum, which particular territory is performing. I test it out for another 3 to 6 months in terms of increasing my budgets online for that particular territory, and plan my offline strategy to launch that territory to create more awareness. So one also has to look at the fact that when you are entering some offline market, so example, we spoke about our strategy, that we are entering with certain kiosks in some, high footfall malls. So what we have done internally, I don't want to pay money to Facebook anymore. I have pegged that budget to a certain extent. I will not pay it to Facebook. I don't want to fill their coffins, right? So I am very sure that if I am pulling out that budget somewhere, I am putting it in awareness to a territory which is performing for me and giving certain new content to commerce-led approach from my kiosks. I am giving more personalization by driving my influencer marketing from my kiosk at my offline kiosk and giving them more awareness around my brand in the best performing territories for myself in the online market. So that is how we have, finalized certain market entry strategy for ourselves. That because you cannot leave the offline market. Any D2C brand who has to grow with the rising input costs, you cannot remain offline, right? Online only. So you have to look at so it would be different for everyone. It would be, for him it will be different, for Divij it will be very different because it's a very unique product and a unique category. So one has to test out where, so for example, Guardian Pharmacy could be very good for him, but a normal retail pharmacy will not be. So everyone has one has to look at it very granular, very vernacular, and then open it.
Very good point, Param. Punit, this just lays back to the point which Param was saying about data, right? Because end of the day, what he's saying that these are my hero SKUs which sells online. I know there is an acceptance and I want to go to the offline market. I know which geos it's selling because of my digital, and then I want to go back and use that to probably put my products there in those stores. From an EasyEcom, because you guys have been working with a lot of these D2C brands which are now going offline, and what are you seeing in those sort of things? Because they are eventually going and using the data, and you guys are the one who sort of collect the data, help them analyze and do the, what have been you seeing on that part from that perspective?
I think, in our experience, we have seen brands really going the route that Param is essentially talking about, where you basically use, let's say, Amazon like marketplace or your own D2C website to collect data over time, and then you analyze that, do the clustering and figure out where are your customers concentrated. Even you can go to the extent where, data will tell you time of the day people are buying more, what kind of products they are buying, what kind of bundles they are buying, what kind of product they are buying together, right? And all these learnings come into handy when you are selling offline, right? So, especially if you are selling a little bit low-cost products, how can you create bundles? And that information can come from e-commerce very easily, because it's very easy to experiment there, right? So that is where I think all the data that you are collecting online can become very, very powerful for you to have successful launch offline.
Very good. Pawan, I think this is actually should be I should have started this point of offline and online from you rather than going around and coming back to you, because I think you guys are the pioneers in what this has been done. What has been from a future perspective and how you guys have been approaching this and thinking about it, because there is nobody else who has the presence as big as you. There's nobody else who will have data as big as you, right? And knowing which consumers and buying where, right? So how are you guys thinking about that from a perspective, or what are the D2C brands should think today?
Yeah, so if I just talk about future, actually for us, it was the reverse, right? We are very strongly online presence brand. So my experience has been slightly different compared to others, because we had different problems. Our problem was that you have maybe 300 stores, but you're not able to get new customers, right? You're not able to get beyond what you're getting on a regular basis. I think these were the problems, and I always say this, that pre-COVID it was always part of a boardroom discussion, but the moment COVID hit, it was a question of survival, and then one had to go online. And that's where I think we started to learn the game. For us, omni-channel actually came from offline to online, and that's where we realized that because of our old data set which we have, the customer base and so on, for us to immediately kind of grow was slightly simpler. That's why I'm such a big believer of data, right? For us, I think getting those first maybe 10,000 orders were like far easier in that sense. But obviously after that, when you have to scale up, and then when you're competing with so many other players in the market, then obviously you have to create differentiation and so on and so forth. But that continued to happen. But broadly, what I'm trying to say is, for us, it was really expanding the market, right? I mean, that's how for us it was to complement, right, what's happening in the market. If we were just offline alone, I don't know how much more market we could have kind of sort of expanded, but online definitely helped us to get the new set of customers. When I used to look back the data, there was very interesting pattern which I saw. One thing is that, for the bigger basket shopping, customers still used to come offline, right, and buy maybe the monthly grocery. But the moment one had to fill in a weekly sort of a top up, they used to come to, they used to go online and buy. So in a way, it kind of complemented both offline and online, and that's how I see the world going forward, right? There's no one answer to anything. I don't think in India, as I think most of us are saying, offline retail or experience retail, let's call it, right? It's never going to die. Because, just as a country, we have very limited spaces to socialize, right? Malls happen to be one of them, right? I mean, movies happen to be one of them. I don't think they'll ever go away. But it's just about the moment you complement each other. Of course, I agree to the point that it's expensive, but if you want to scale up, I think that's what Mamaearth and other brands are doing. You have to go offline if you want to scale up beyond a point. So that's been our experience. But yeah, omni-channel, I think, is the future, absolutely.
Very good point, Punit. Very right. Another point which I thought I wanted to, sorry, Pawan, very good point. So I think another point which I've been hearing about from a D2C brands, and I thought, and I just put this on a thing, is about this clean, sustainability, ESG, plastic free, right? Because the consumers nowadays are asking for, right? Is it more a fad today, or is it going to be like a thing which is going to change the way, because the new Gen Z consumers are asking for that? Or is it like a fad today, we are saying we need to sort of probably serve a niche sort of consumers? Or we think this will become probably the way we were saying chemical free going to natural, now will this plastic free, all of this, will it become sort of a mainstream over a period of time?
Definitely, I think there's no doubt to it. I mean, customers are looking for it, and when we go out and speak to customers, when we analyze our heat maps, when we have these things displayed on the website and all, I think this is undoubtedly one thing. But on the previous topic, because I left out one point, and I'd like to add that as a perspective, as a fresh perspective. I agree with Chirag that, when you have money, you should go offline. But I'll give you a fresher perspective, which has recently changed. Now, I may be a smaller TG, but I may be the future TG. So I'll tell you, from the past 2 years, I've not been to any of the grocery or the chemist stores. Everything that I've been buying has been online. I agree that 93% is still happening offline, but COVID has changed my behavior a lot. And with Swiggy, Instamart, Zepto, and everybody else coming, it has changed for my parents as well. So maybe if you are thinking of, I agree that, experience and impulse buy are two things that you can't take away ever in offline. But other than that, everything else has been taken out of the offline. So please be careful as to where you are, planning to spend your bucks if you see the future. But to the sustainability point, I definitely agree. I mean, that's one thing that consumers are becoming aware. And even as brand owners, we should become aware, and we should definitely support the ideas. And it is being appreciated. People understand, and we receive a lot of appreciation if we are doing things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So Vineet, on clean and sustainability. So we are a vegan brand, right? And we have been a 100% vegan brand wherein we use leather, which is cruelty free, right? And initially, a couple of years back, it might be a new concept in India, foreign abroad, it has catch up, and people want vegan products, right? But it's not that. In India, initially it was all about food related vegan, right? But people are now understanding that it's not like you can be vegan not only in food, but in your lifestyle as well, right? And that is how they're adapting it, right? And it is there to stay, right? Like we hear a lot from our folks as well, like, if we, like the testimonials that we get for Zouk, right? Like they talk about, they love our prints, and then, oh, also it's vegan, right? So vegan is always there in the story somehow, right? So we, as Rich said, right, people are becoming very, very conscious in India, right? What they consume, from where they consume, even the label they now see, right? Is it made in India or not, right? For that matter, right? So it is going to stay, and it is going to become a differentiating factor for every brand now going forward.
Very interesting. Chirag, I know in your case, we've been seeing about this whole the health food wave to going back to the clean food wave also. We sort of, there are a few brands which have come up and saying we want to come up with this clean food. Do you think in the food category specifically, this is because all of the brands which we have seen in this clean food wave, that has reached to a certain scale. Will that scalability will be a challenge, do you think, in that category?
So it will only go up. Right, so that's the positive side, right? So the clean food, the healthy food, the market is getting created, and it's going in a positive direction, right? But still, India as a country, right, still works on taste, right? What sells is taste, right? Indulgence, taste. आज भी मैं हर साल सोचता हूँ कि मिठाइयों का business कम होएगा, but कभी नहीं होता, right? It only goes up, right? Cadbury business is only going up, right? Everybody knows what they sell. Right, so I'm saying, still taste, indulgence is what India is. People are looking for still. I think healthy. There's a niche market, right? People are getting educated. I think it's a problem of education also, right? People at our level, we are able to understand. We are able to read the labels better. We are able to understand what the call out, what does it actually means, right? But I think the mass consumer still is very layman when it comes to all this, right? So for them, I think the taste buds is what that matters, right? So I think as soon as the consumer is getting educated, I think we are doing that education as young brands. A lot of initiatives are happening around it, but it will have a journey to it, right? And I think there is market for both. But how big is that market? I think it will still be. I think taste which will dominate in the longer run. I think even if you see evolve like developed markets, right? So we recently did an exhibition in London, right? And the idea of the exhibition was to understand that market better, right? Just go there, stand there, talk to people, right? And being a developed market, right? So now you get 10 types of popcorns there, right? So now consumer is looking what different can you offer, right? That differentiation is coming from what clean label, is it vegan, is it this, is it that, right? So those kind of things are being asked there, right? Again, how big is that market? Still a question, right? It is single digit, is it double digit? But I think still, if you see the numbers of a UK popcorn market, for example, right? 98% is still what sells everywhere, right? It's only 2% which is vegan, which is zero oil and all that stuff, right? So I think it's getting bigger, but I think still a long way to go. I think.
Sure. No, good point. Good point. I was just told that we have 4 minutes to go, so I thought maybe we can sort of speed up a little bit. Maybe, Param, now coming to before we sort of just summarize, I think, wanted to know your last thoughts on how you think, like we going back to our original topic, which was, I think we did cover a very, very good points. I think started with creativity to product customer centricity. You talked about distribution, you talked about data, you talked about unit economics, I think. I want to hear what is your last thoughts about sort of if you sort of look at what do you think are the key or the 3 or 4 points from a differentiation which needs to be created in today's world from a D2C brand?
So I would, before ending, I would like to have one quick point. We spoke about, for younger folks who are looking to enter, right,
yes,
the D2C side.
Absolutely.
So for them, it is very important to find, to understand the platforms, that how Facebook works, how Amazon works, or how Nykaa works, or a Myntra works. So typically, they are impulse and browse platforms. So they are not very search oriented. Even on the data set, on a data point, Amazon typically in India is a 70% browse sales and 30% search-led sales. So if someone wants to build a D2C brand, all the points which we have mentioned here are very, very relevant. But selecting the category, creating a differentiation, also you really need to, when you are charting it out, clearly put some points in terms of its differentiation of a consumer behavioral characteristics. That how would a consumer react to the product which I'm trying to bring. If it's a competitive category, then the ads on either of the channels will be very expensive. If you want to bring out some uniqueness, it has to be from a browse and an impulse kind of a side, that if you want to bring out some product which is very unique, then it will be a better performing ad in terms of the D2C aspect or Amazon aspect, right? So this point we were speaking, but I guess we missed out, because it's very important to build a brand if someone is starting, because these days, if you're pointing out that sustainability is slightly on a fad side, even overall people would suffer if people are not realizing that D2C is also heading towards becoming a very large problematic situation, that so much of money has got into it, so many people are interested into it. You really have to value your time. So if you are launching, keep certain points in mind, that it has to be very unique, your differentiating factor as a consumer. If you are looking at a product on a Facebook, what will impact you to make your purchase via Facebook or an Amazon when you are just browsing? You are not searching for a requirement or a need, because that is very different. That's psyche is very different when people are searching for a product, and a psyche for browsing is very different. So that would be my closing remarks in terms of building a new brand if people want to start.
Right. I think we can see it's less than a minute to go. Maybe Pawan or Punit, one of you sort of have your last closing remarks about the whole.
No, I think very well point made here, guys, and I'm sure everybody can see the passion coming out of all the entrepreneurs. So I think it's really, good to be part of this forum, and there's so much to learn, which happened in last 1 hour. So yes, D2C business is a very interesting one, is the future, as everyone calls it. But yeah, I think a lot of points which everyone made in terms of creating your niche, creating experience, ensuring data, all of it you all need to keep in mind to make a successful D2C business. Yeah, that's my last thought. Yeah.
Anything, Punit, you want to say?
Yeah, just one thing I would like to mention is that, I personally believe that India is probably where the US was, 20 years back. People are, we're all paying a lot more than we were paying 2 years back, right? So people are earning more, people are willing to spend. So I think as a D2C brand or any other brand for that matter, the opportunity is out there for us to innovate and go out there and basically create an aspirational brand that people want to buy. Like Apple, for example. So.
Good. I think we have some time for, no time for questions? No? Okay. Okay. So, we don't have. If we shouldn't? Or should we? If anybody has questions, then they can take it. Let's please go ahead.
So thank you for this session. It was really wonderful. I just had a quick question. I don't know whether it is relevant, but there's a lot of money which is poured in the last 2 years into new platforms like Meesho and City Mall and Shop Kirana. And I know there are a lot of groceries happening there, but I believe they have intention of going into other categories as well. Any thoughts as to how they will evolve? Have you looked at it? Are you looking, because they are purely targeting tier 2, tier 3 towns. So any thoughts there?
So, those platforms typically in India, as you very well captured, they are focused on tier 2, tier 3 as of now. So even on the distribution, so Udaan, Meesho, Shop Kirana, 1K raised, yesterday only. So as and when more and more penetration of D2C is happening for their websites to tier 2, tier 3, their demand generation is also happening on. So for example, I own 2 brands. My older brand, Khadi Essentials, was 2 years old. So for that, we are seeing conversions happening via Meesho and Udaan as well. So as and when your D2C starts to age a bit, your penetration is, and if your marketing is also tier 2, tier 3 focused, these new platforms are also adding more and more business. So Trell, per se, social commerce or video commerce, again, they are tier 2, tier 3 focused. These are also relatively adding a lot of revenue to D2C if they are omni-channel approach. That, for example, us, we are very omni-centric. So for us, they are making, obviously the volume would be lower as compared to the larger HULs and PNGs of the world because they are typically meant for them. So Parle-G is a very good example for these platforms. They are one of the highest grossers of this category. But overall for us, even if you are able to acquire, because the cost of acquisition is there lower. So that consumer, if they love your product, the ethos which we are mentioning, they will definitely come back to you on your website to check you out. So you can have newer customer acquired without spends of ad, and you can retain them if they are coming back to your website. So that's the play. Overall, on a volume perspective, it doesn't make sense for the new age D2C brands as of now because the price points are also very different.
Okay. You can carry on. No, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I think we are out for time. There.